Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we really need to talk about the triangle.
Oh, that triangle.
You know the one I mean.
Mm.
If you have ever sat through a corporate training session or an onboarding, or even just scrolled through LinkedIn for 5 minutes, you have seen it.
It's everywhere. It's the visual shorthand for education.
Right. It's colorful, it's tiered, and it makes this very bold, very specific promise about how your brain is supposed to work.
The famous learning pyramid, or sometimes the cone of experience.
Yes, and it always has these incredibly confident statistics attached to it. It tells us we remember, what, 10% of what we read?
20% of what we hear.
And then at the very bottom, the big, wide, supportive base, it claims we remember a staggering 90% of what we do.
It's a very comforting graphic, isn't it? It just confirms that gut feeling that, practice is better than theory.
I have to be honest with you, and with everyone listening, I have nodded along to this slide at least a dozen times. I've probably even repeated it to sound smart.
Oh, you can't just read the manual.
You got to get your hands dirty. That's the 90% rule. I mean, it feels intuitively true.
Yeah.
But today, we are digging into a white paper by Quentin Alvarez from Immersive Factory that suggests I might have been, well, spreading a lie.
Lie is a strong word. Let's call it a neuromyth. But yes, the bad news is that the pyramid, at least the version with the percentages, is it's total fiction.
Total fiction.
No,
Okay, so before we get into the heavy lifting of how we actually learn, because we have some really interesting models to cover from Argyris, Schoen, and Kolb, we have to clear the crime scene.
right.
If the pyramid is a myth, who made it up?
Well, the investigation takes us back to 1946. There was a researcher named Edgar Dale. He wrote a book called Audiovisual Methods in Teaching.
Okay.
And in that book, he did draw a pyramid. He called it the cone of experience.
So Dale is the culprit. He's the one who misled all of us.
Actually, no. Dale is the victim here. He has been framed by history.
Really?
Dale's goal was just to classify different types of media. He put abstract things like text and symbols at the top, and he put concrete things like direct experience at the bottom. He was just organizing them from abstract to concrete. It was a filing system, not a ranking system.
So he wasn't saying the bottom is better than the top.
Not at all. In fact, he explicitly warned his readers not to view it as a hierarchy of effectiveness. He never said doing was 90% better than reading. And here's the smoking gun. In the original 1946 version, there are 0 percentages.
No 10%, no 20%, no 90%.
Nothing. Just the cone itself.
So where did the numbers come from? Someone had to actually type them onto the slide?
The white paper points the finger at the NTL Institute, the National Training Laboratories, decades later. The theory is they added the percentages as a marketing strategy.
Oh, marketing, of course. The source of all great modern myths.
Exactly. They were selling training based on active pedagogy. And if you are trying to sell a hands-on workshop, what sells better?
A nuanced academic theory.
Or a chart that scientifically proves your method is 9 times more effective than reading a book.
It's the path of least resistance. It's just made-up data used to sell a product, and now it's in textbooks all over the world.
And the Alvarez paper makes a really important point here. It's not just a harmless error. When serious training organizations use this debunked pyramid in their decks,
They're shooting themselves in the foot.
exactly, they lose credibility because if a learner or a client just scratches the surface, they realize the science isn't there. It's a house of cards.
It's like quoting a movie line as historical fact. But here's where I get stuck. Okay, the numbers are fake. Dale didn't write them. But the intuition, it still feels right. I do feel like I learn better when I actually do the task. So if the pyramid is wrong, what does the real science say? Are we just flailing in the dark?
We certainly aren't in the dark, but the reality is way more complex than a simple pyramid. The white paper suggests we turn to the work of Chris Argyris and Donald Schoen.
Okay.
These were heavy hitters professors at Harvard and MIT in the 70s and 90s. They focused on something called organizational learning.
Organizational learning. That sounds a bit dry, but I have a feeling you're going to tell me it's the key to everything.
It is because it fundamentally shifts how we view error. Their model is built on the concept of loops, specifically single loop learning versus double loop learning.
Okay, let's unpack the loops. Start with single loop. What does that look like?
The classic analogy is a thermostat. You set your thermostat to 70 degrees. It has one rule. If the temp goes above 70, turn on the AC. If it drops below, turn on the heat.
Right.
It detects a deviation, an error, and it acts to correct it using a preset rule.
So in workplace context, this is troubleshooting.
Precisely. Imagine a customer service rep. A client complains. The rep looks at the manual, finds the angry client script, and offers a refund. They solved the immediate problem.
The temperature is back to 70.
They detected an error, and they fixed it. That is single-loop learning.
Which is necessary. I mean, you need the thermostat to work.
Absolutely. It keeps the lights on. But here's the problem. What if the manual is wrong? What if the refund policy is actually what's making customers angry in the first place?
The thermostat can't fix that. It just keeps clicking on and off following the broken rule.
Exactly. And that is where double-loop learning comes in. This happens when the standard fix fails, the thermostat breaks, or, the house is on fire.
The old rules don't apply.
Right. The learner has to stop, step back, and question the underlying assumptions. They have to ask, why are we doing it this way? Is the premise itself flawed?
That sounds incredibly difficult, not just intellectually, but socially. You're talking about questioning the boss or the system.
Or the way things have always been done. That's why it's so rare. Double-loop learning requires a level of psychological safety that most organizations just don't have.
Right.
It requires you to admit that the system is broken. But Argyris and Schoen argue that this is the only way deep learning and real innovation happen. You have to encounter a friction the manual can't solve.
So, to bring this back to our doing versus reading debate, you can't really trigger double-loop learning just by reading a textbook, can you? You have to be in the situation.
Exactly. You have to feel the failure.
The core of their model is that we learn by correcting errors. If you never do, you never generate the error. If you never generate the error, you never trigger the loop.
That's the key.
This connects so directly to gaming for me. I mean, what is a video game if not failure? The simulator.
That's a good way to put it.
You try a level, you die, you realize your strategy was wrong, you change your approach. That's the loop right there.
It's a brilliant connection, and the white paper makes it too. They quote the psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott, who said, "Playing is doing."
Playing is doing.
Think about a difficult boss fight in a game. You try your usual attacks, that's single loop, you lose, you try again, you lose. Finally, you have to pause and say, wait, my entire build is wrong for this enemy. I need to rethink my character stats.
That moment of questioning your whole strategy.
That is double-loop learning.
So serious games, and by that we mean games designed for training, not just for fun, are essentially trying to create a safe space for that kind of crisis.
Exactly. They provide a sandbox where you can experience the failure and the double-loop questioning without actually crashing $1 million piece of equipment or ruining a client relationship.
It allows for the error without the real-world consequence.
Precisely.
Okay, so Argyris and Schoen give us the why. We learn to fix errors in our mental models. But the white paper also spends a lot of time on another name, David Kolb. How does he fit into this?
If Argyris and Schoen explain the error, Kolb explains the process of fixing it. He published a model in 1984 called experiential learning. And he argues that learning isn't a list, and it's certainly not a pyramid, it is a cycle.
A wheel that keeps turning. I like that. It implies you're never really done.
Yeah.
What are the stages?
He identifies 4, and this is really helpful for anyone trying to master a new skill. The first stage is concrete experience.
That's the doing.
That's the doing. You're in the moment, having the experience.
Okay, let's use a real example. Let's say leading a team meeting that goes completely off the rails.
Perfect. Stage 1, you are in the meeting, people are shouting, the agenda is gone, you are experiencing the chaos.
A nightmare scenario. Got it.
Stage 2 is reflective observation. The meeting ends, you go back to your desk, maybe you grab a coffee, and you just replay the tape.
Right, the postmortem.
You're thinking, wow, that was a disaster. Mike got angry when I brought up the budget, and then Sarah just stopped listening. You're reviewing the data.
Okay, so far so painful.
Stage 3 is abstract conceptualization. This is the critical light bulb moment. You try to make sense of that data, you form a theory, you tell yourself, okay, the problem wasn't the people. The problem was that I introduced the budget cuts before I showed the project wins.
You create a general rule from this specific event.
Exactly. You've conceptualized the problem. And finally, stage 4, active experimentation. You plan a new action based on that theory. You say, next week, I will start with the wins.
And then, you walk into the next meeting.
And you are back to stage 1, concrete experience. The wheel turns.
And because you have a new theory, the experience is different, which leads to new reflections. And on and on. That's how we get better.
That is how we become experts.
This makes so much sense. But the white paper mentions something about learner profiles. Does everyone do this cycle the same way?
No, and this is where it gets fascinating. Kolb realized that while we all need to go through the cycle, most of us have a home base. We prefer certain quadrants of the wheel.
He identified 4 types, right?
Yeah.
The divergent, the assimilator.
The convergent and the accommodator.
Okay, I love this stuff. Let's break these down, but give me a scenario. Let's say a team is trying to assemble a piece of complicated furniture without instructions.
Great scenario. Okay, first you have the divergent. They combine concrete experience and reflection. They are imaginative. In your furniture scenario, they're the ones laying out all the pieces, looking at them and brainstorming.
Hey, this looks like it could go here or maybe there. Let's keep our options open.
Exactly. The dreamer. What if the table was a chair? They're great at generating ideas, but might struggle to make a decision.
Okay, I know that person. Who's next?
Then you have the assimilator. They combine reflection and abstract conceptualization. They love theory. They are the ones ignoring the pieces and trying to find a PDF of the manual online.
Or trying to deduce the structural logic of the screws.
Ideally, the torque on the screw should be, they want the mental model to be perfect before they lift a finger. The professor.
A professor. I need to understand the philosophy of the cabinet. Got it.
Then the convergent. They combine abstract conceptualization and active experimentation. They are the problem solvers.
They want the theory only so they can apply it.
Right. Okay, the manual says step 1 is the base. Hand me the screwdriver. Let's get this done. They are practical, unemotional, focused on the one right answer. The engineer.
The engineer. Give me the tool. Point me at the problem. Love it. And last.
And finally, the accommodator. They combine active experimentation and concrete experience. They rely on gut instinct. In the furniture scenario, they're the ones who have already started screwing things together before you've even opened the box.
The daredevil. Let's just see if this fits. If it doesn't, we'll force it.
That's them.
I feel like I have worked with all of these people,
Yeah.
usually on the same project, which explains a lot of the headaches.
It explains a lot of team conflict. But here is the catch for training. If you just give someone a textbook, you are serving the assimilator, but you're losing the accommodator completely.
And if you just throw them into a task without guidance, the divergent might get overwhelmed.
Exactly.
So how do games solve this? Because earlier, we agreed that playing is doing. Doesn't that mean video games are only good for the accommodators, the people who just want to jump in?
That is a massive misconception, and the white paper really fights against it. In fact, the University of Leicester once made a chart matching activities to Kolb's stages, and they listed games only under concrete experience.
Which seems logical. You're holding a controller. You're doing an action. It feels like doing.
But it's too simple. If games were just doing, they would just be button mashing. The white paper introduces the ESAR system to correct this. It's a way of analyzing the psychological complexity of games.
Okay, ESAR. Exercise, symbolic, assembly, and rule. That sounds technical. Break it down. How does a game hit the abstract part of the brain? That seems like the opposite of play.
Think about a complex resource management game like Civilization or SimCity.
Or a serious business simulation.
Right. You aren't just clicking buttons, you are building a massive invisible mental model in your head. You're thinking, if I raise taxes now, my popularity drops, but my revenue goes up, which allows me to build a hospital later.
You're theorizing. You're predicting.
That is pure abstract conceptualization.
That's true. I have definitely paused strategy games to literally sketch out a plan on a piece of paper. It can feel like homework.
Exactly. And what about reflective observation? Think about multiplayer games or team-based simulations. After a loss, what happens?
The team gets on the headset. Why did we lose? You went in too early. No, the healer was out of position.
That discussion, that is social reflection.
So if you design the serious game correctly, it's not just a doing simulator. It's a thinking, reflecting, theorizing, and testing simulator. It forces you through the whole Kolb cycle.
Bingo. That is the power of a well-designed serious game. It doesn't just mimic the 90% doing from the fake pyramid. It integrates the reading, the hearing, the thinking, and the doing into one cohesive loop.
It satisfies the dreamer, the professor, the engineer, and the daredevil all at once.
That's the goal.
Okay, I'm sold on the cycle. We've busted the pyramid. We've replaced it with loops.
Oh.
But I have to be the skeptic for a second. I started this deep dive admitting I like the pyramid because I like numbers.
Right.
Like data. Is there any model out there that uses percentages and is actually, scientifically valid? Or are we just stuck with abstract circles?
Well, there is one model that gets cited a lot, and the white paper discusses it. It is called the 70-20-10 model.
Okay, 70-20-10. That adds up to 100. I'm listening. What do the numbers stand for?
This comes from researchers McCall, Eichinger, and Lombardo. They propose that 70% of learning comes from real-life experience, the doing on the job.
70%. Okay.
20% comes from social interaction, feedback, coaching, venting to your neighbor.
And the last 10?
And only 10% comes from formal training, the classroom, the e-learning, the seminars.
Wait, pause. Only 10%.
That's the claim.
Companies spend billions of dollars on formal training. We fly people to conferences. We build these massive learning management systems. And you're telling me that accounts for 1/10 of what people actually learn?
It is a shocking number, isn't it? It implies that the vast majority of our professional competence is just picked up along the way, almost involuntarily.
But hold on. You just spent the first 10 minutes telling me to distrust nice round percentages. Why should I trust these numbers? Isn't this just another pyramid?
And that is the perfect instinct. You are engaging your double-loop critical thinking right now. You are absolutely right to be skeptical. The white paper warns us here, too, the 7 to 110 model.
Oh.
It was based on a survey of only 200 executives.
200 people. That's it. That's barely a focus group.
And only executives, successful managers. They didn't ask the factory floor workers or the nurses or the junior coders. They asked the bosses how they learned to be bosses.
So this is survivor bias, the statistic.
Pretty much. We cannot treat 7-0-20-10 as a universal law of physics. A surgeon probably learns differently than a marketing manager.
I would hope so. A surgeon better get more than 10% formal training before they cut me open.
Please, yes.
Okay, so we are 0 for 2 on perfect statistics today.
We are, but, and this is the key, unlike the pyramid, the premise of 7-0-20-10 is backed by a lot of evidence. Even if the numbers aren't precise, the ratio feels correct. Informal learning, the stuff that happens outside the classroom, is massive.
Which brings us back to the distinction the paper makes between formal and informal gaming. Because I play a lot of games informally on my phone, and I learn things, usually useless trivia, but I don't think that's what my boss wants to pay for.
Right. Informal gaming is playing Scrabble and living a new word because your aunt played Quixotic on a triple word score.
It's accidental.
It's a side effect. You didn't play to learn, you played to win, and learning just happened.
Instrumentalized was the word the paper used, right?
Yeah.
Serious game is instrumentalized.
Yes, it is formal. It is designed with a specific pedagogical goal. But here's the magic trick.
I'm listening.
A serious game is a formal tool. It falls into that 10% budget bucket, but it mimics the informal experience of the 70%.
Oh, I see. It cheats the system.
In the best possible way. It takes the formal training budget, which usually buys boring lectures that nobody remembers, and it uses it to build an experience that feels like learning by doing.
It captures the efficiency of the 70% within the structure of the 10%.
That's it.
That is the aha moment for me. It bridges the gap. You aren't just throwing people into the deep end, which is the 70% and can be dangerous, but you aren't just lecturing them on dry land, which is the 10% and is boring.
Right.
You build a swimming pool.
That is a perfect analogy. Serious games are the swimming pool. Safe, structured, deep enough to swim, but controlled enough that you won't drown.
So let's try to synthesize all of this. We started this deep dive with a lie. The learning pyramid.
A comforting lie, but yeah, a lie nonetheless.
We learned from Argyris and shown that simple practice isn't enough. We need error. We need to hit that wall where the rules break down so we can question the system.
That's double leap learning.
And that requires a safe environment, which games can provide. Then we learned from Kolb that learning is a cycle experience, reflection, theory, practice.
And that a good serious game can hit all 4 of those buttons. It's not just for the doers, it's for the thinkers too.
Thanks to the ESAR system for proving that. And finally, we looked at the 7-0-20-10 model. The numbers might be a bit fuzzy, but the lesson is clear. Informal learning dominates.
And the goal of modern training should be to make the formal stuff feel as powerful and engaging as the informal stuff.
Exactly.
The white paper concludes that while the 90% statistic on the pyramid is fake, the theoretical necessity of doing is basically 100%. You cannot bypass the experience.
You cannot learn to swim by reading a book on fluid dynamics.
You really can't.
Which leaves me with a big question for everyone listening. If we know, whether through these models or just plain common sense, that people learn by doing, by failing, and by talking to each other, why does the average corporate training program still look like a library reading session?
It's the path of least resistance. It is so much easier and cheaper to buy a PowerPoint deck than it is to design a meaningful simulation.
But maybe, if we want actual results, we need to stop buying the deck and start building the game.
And if you see that colorful pyramid in your next meeting,
Raise your hand. Ask for the source. Be that person.
Politely, of course.
Of course. Thanks for listening to this deep dive into the truth about how we learn. We'll catch you on the next one.
Keep learning.